Hello and welcome back to the podcast. This is Things You Can't Unhear and I'm Maritza. And today there's probably going to be lots of new, wonderful, inspirational insights that you walk away with. Before we jump into this conversation, I wanted to let you know about something exciting I've been working on. As you might know, I'm incredibly passionate about helping people to find and share their voice, especially if their voice is one that aims to create positive change in others. So I've been working intentionally to bring that mission to life and have launched a new podcast network with purpose. It's called the Guide Your Light Network, and it features podcasts and voices that inspire, educate, and transform listeners. And we have a library of podcasts that are part of this network that truly embody that mission, and we are looking for more. So if this has sparked an interest in you and you're ready to start exploring speaking and using your voice in this way, I'd really love you to check it out. And if you have something important to say, but perhaps don't know where to start to bring it to life, we can also help to hold your hand through that process to craft your authentic message through our Guide Your Light sessions, where you can get super clear on your intention, messaging, and structure needed to launch a podcast of your own with purpose that is authentically you. So just click over to guideyourlightnetwork.com and you can find out more. Hey everybody, I'm Maritza Barone, and this is the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard or read or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that caused you to make positive changes so that you could become the best version of yourself? Well, we share this show with access to inspiring and empowering humans who will motivate you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate you. Sit back, settle in, and let this be the day you hear something that simply cannot be unheard. Today on the show, I know you're going to love this, we welcome Sheila V, a professional psychic medium and the author of a new book called Brave, to discuss how we can merge our corporate and our spiritual worlds. This is actually a topic of conversation that regularly pops up in my circle and with the people that I work with who have a new perception of life and who are potentially struggling to merge their inner and outer worlds. Sheila is the perfect person for us to talk to guide us through this, having experienced it herself firsthand. She was a successful finance director before a spiritual awakening changed the course of her life and knows what it's like to be an outlier in the corporate world. She's truly passionate about enabling others to open themselves up to spiritual wisdom so they too can step into their purpose and live powerful, authentic lives. In this conversation, we discuss this, plus she explains how to tap into our own spiritual power and intuition, connect with our own spirit guides, communicate with past loved ones, live out our life contracts, and live aligned to our higher purpose. It's such an interesting discussion about consciousness, spirituality, and more. So take a listen. Let me know what comes up for you. You can reach out on my Instagram at Maritza_Barone. I'm always there to take your messages and keep chatting about this and keeping the conversation going. So I hope you enjoy this chat with Sheila. Welcome, Sheila, to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I can't tell you how excited I am today for this conversation.
It's so awesome to be here, Maritza. I love what you represent. I love your topics you speak about, and hopefully your audience is going to find what I speak about quite interesting.
Speaking of our audience, they absolutely love anything to do with spirituality, psychic mediums, and anything to do sort of in that realm of topics. So I know people are going to be tuning into this going, okay, who's she got on next? Because we've had some incredible psychic mediums on this podcast who have completely changed my life with their messages, as well as a lot of our listeners. So I'm super pumped to get into this chat with you today and uncover everything that you're about. And I said to you before we hit record, actually, you know, a lot of what's been coming up with me with people around me are spiritual people who are in the corporate world and are wearing a mask and not able to be themselves. So I want to maybe jump into that topic really quite deeply with you today, because I know you were in that position and have now merged your two worlds as one. And how does it even feel? Tell us how that feels.
Yeah, it feels a relief.
Yeah.
So I quit my corporate career 3 years ago as a finance director. So I was a CFO, finance and commercial director in a really large publishing house. I loved that job. I just knew it wasn't my ultimate purpose. And I had a knowing for many years. So many clients I mentor and coach to get their spiritual businesses up and running. I noticed that there's a space and time, I call it the void, where they know they're meant to make a change. And I've personally battled that for many years because there's so much safety and security in having a corporate career. I worked hard to get there. I did an MBA, I was really successful. And there was a real big part of my rational mind that was saying, can you do this? Should you do this? They were the voices of my culture, my social group, my family, society in general. It's like this thing you can do, speaking to the dead, seeing destiny lines and timelines play out in people's auric fields, channeling from higher dimensions. That's weird. It is weird because we don't really have a dialogue that we speak about it. I personally believe that the planet is awakening. I don't think this is news. The speed that it's awakening means that so many women and men in the corporate world are awakening, and they need a lot of support. So there's a group of us, Maritza, you're in that group too, where we're kind of the early wavers. We're early in, but we're not the first wavers, but we're early in the process to set up spiritual businesses. And then we go back to corporate and we teach about consciousness. We teach about, regulating our emotions. We teach about spirituality in a way that's accessible to them. The process I've gone through was messy. I wrote a book about it, and it's called Brave, Courageously Live Your Truth. I truly think it takes bravery to own your spiritual nature and spiritual gifts. And I don't refer in the book to spiritual path. I call it the courageous path, because it takes courage to leave behind a part of your life that makes sense and step into the unknown. And if I'm going to be really honest, it didn't make sense being a medium, but it didn't make sense that I wasn't one either. Mm-hmm. And that's how I knew I've got to do it. I was like, I just don't know how to be a medium and make this into a career, and be like you, Maritza, every door I walk through, another one opens. Like I'm about to have a second book deal, keynote speaking now in the space of what it is to be brave, speaking about consciousness back in corporate. But it took me 7 years. 4 years I ran my business part-time, and my third year running it full-time. The things that have happened, I never guessed would happen. It's a big surprise.
I love this because we think about it. We don't want everyone in the corporate world to leave the corporate world and start a spiritual business, because then where are we as a society? We'll have no one left in the corporate world. But you touched on, you take that space, you go, you find yourself, your flow, whatever it is, your purpose, your dharma, and then you go back into that world and enlighten others. That is gold. That is, what I haven't heard before. And it reminds me of a couple of people that I know who are embodying this fully. James from Food Matters, who I've worked with for a while, he's embodying this fully. He comes into his workspace and talks about consciousness with his team. And it's just an expected conversation. It's part of the practice of that team culture, and it's spreading a message that others are potentially afraid to tap into in these corporate environments because they fear being judged or looked at in the wrong way. Did you have that experience when you started speaking up in your finance director role?
Yeah, well, something really interesting happened, and I write about this in my book. The same week that I was offered a CFO role, that same week I was offered a spot to go on an Australian television show called Psychic TV. It doesn't operate now, but back then it was a bit of a thing. And that same week I was presented with these two incredible opportunities, and I thought, which one do I choose? It didn't make sense, like being a corporate executive going on the weekends doing psychic readings on television. Yet here I was doing psychic readings on television going, I actually love my corporate job and I love publishing and I love mentoring, coaching internally. And this was still part of a timeline I had to be in. And I realized at the end of that week, I did not have to choose. I could do both. And I was fearing everyone judging me. And really, I was judging me. When I shared my spirituality, people leaned in. They were really like, wow, this is really cool part of you. And I realized that the more we share it, the more people awaken. We help people awaken. And we also dispel the myth that it's weird. You know, I studied Buddhism and studied to meditate in my early 30s. I'm 45 now. I studied to do yoga in my late 20s. Back then, you did yoga in running gear. There wasn't yoga clothes like there is now. Back then, I had to meditate with Buddhists because meditation wasn't a thing. Mindfulness was not common. And I personally believe there are some people that if you're you're leading the pack, corporate worlds are catching up. If you ran a meditation program 12, 15 years ago, you're weird. That was a weird thing to do. Yoga was odd. Now it's like a given that you do yoga on a corporate retreat. Companies have meditation. Teachers come in and teach clients and their staff how to meditate. This is really normal. So in 10 years, I'm excited about what corporates are going to be doing in terms of helping their staff with consciousness, with understanding and connecting to their higher self, understanding how to manifest. I teach this now to women and men that want to come and sit in my container. But I can't wait for corporates to go, hey, we want to teach this to a big group of people. And you're our person. And I truly believe that's around the corner.
We live in an exciting time, don't we? We truly do. Like we're not going to experience this again in our lifetimes, this radical shift that is happening within the collective and within society. It's a massive awakening of, the way that we behave and the way that we think and shutting down beliefs that we've inherited that aren't particularly ours and dealing with issues that we thought we'd, completely dealt with, but are really shoved under the rug and, dealing
trauma.
with. Yeah, exactly. And then
I find trauma and psychic abilities are quite highly linked. I'm happy to talk about that a bit later. Yeah, absolutely. I'm most excited for our generation coming through, our children, our nieces and nephews. They're coming into a world. They've got their own challenges. They'll be saving the planet. They're going to be the true environmentalists, the next generation coming through. We are the awakening of consciousness for them, so that there is a higher state of consciousness for collaboration at that level. So there's not going to be the I, me generation. It's going to be more of the, how do we band together and think of a global solution? This generation we're in currently right now, we don't quite have the consciousness to get there, but that's what all the healers, spiritual teachers, the awakeners are doing, so that the next generation can come through and just, move through that quite quickly.
Good. Messages of hope. I'm so over fear-based messaging that's out there. There's so much doom and gloom and, this world is going to collapse, recession's coming, climate change. There's so much doom and gloom. And to hear messages of hope like that for the future from someone who's tapped in is very relaxing, I must say. So my audience, our listeners of Things You Can't Unhear, will actually kill me if I don't ask these questions. So we want to know about, I know all of us, we want to know about your abilities, what you see, what you hear, what you feel, and how was it a gift? Did you choose to tap into it, or did it just happen to you? Tell us what happened.
Okay, so I'll start with my abilities, and I'm just, as I speak, I want your listeners to think, do I do this? Is this me as well? So I had my awakening probably, my abilities got activated when I was around 12, when I had my first level. I had depression when I was 12. It was a tough time when I was in grade 6. And I find that when we have trauma, capital T, little t, in our childhood or early teenage years, it opens us up to our psychic ability, because we want to leave our body. And without even realizing, we're teaching ourselves to access higher states of consciousness. We don't want to be on earth. That's what's called lifting our consciousness into the higher planes and dimensions. So as a child, this naturally started to happen. I started to speak to the other side and not really realize there was another side. I'm very lucky, and I think that's why I'm a teacher. I've always had a knowing that side and this side are the same, just different dimensions. And so I come from a family that had pronounced psychic mediumship abilities. However, I got mine activated. I shut down for 10, 20 years where I didn't want to know about this. Then it was heartbreak, job loss, all of this crisis that had woken me up to reach in and activate those abilities. So quite often we have childhood experiences, or we're highly sensitive children, and we might think it's a bit of a curse when we're children. And then later in life, we have divorce, redundancies, a bit of a dark night. I call it the dark night of courage. That happened, and we reach for counselors, therapists, spiritual kind of tools, and that's when we start activating these abilities. So I teach this in my awakening course, and we basically receive psychic information through seeing, clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, sensing and knowing. I find are the most common ones. We've all had that gut feeling. We've all had that knowing that we can't unknow. Then we also can hear, smell, and taste. So in my course, I teach this. It can be taught. We always have latent abilities that may not be just activated or amplified, right? So if you're listening to this, there's a really good chance you have psychic abilities. What I teach initially is how to connect to your spirit guides. So one of the first hallmarks of the awakening process is starting to ask the questions: do I have spirit guides? Are they around me? How many guides do I have? How do I connect to them? They're kind of the 4 common questions I get from clients. When they've had their awakening, they start to want to connect to their guides. Why do they want to connect to their guides? Well, their consciousness is lifted and they're starting to feel an energy around them. They might start to dream, but I find you just start to go, I think I'm being guided by something, right? We just don't have the language yet. We don't have the terminology. And then what I find is I teach in my lesson 1, what are the spirit guides, the different types. There are 10 to 15 different types of guides, how you work with them. And there's a meditation to start meeting the guides. Then we have a practice. We do every day for 10 days, meet the guides, meet the guides. Then you start to know their signature energy field, right? They start to come to you in dream state. They start to give you copious amounts of signs and synchronicity. And now, because we're awake, we start seeing the intelligence of the universe teaching us, helping us. All of these synchronistic events that we think are chance aren't. This is called working with the quantum field and pulling in timelines in the quantum field. It's called an acceleration. An acceleration of things happens when you have your awakening. So it kind of all happens at the same time. But I do, because I've done an MBA and I've like written I sat and I've broken down the steps. So how do I demystify spirituality? Because when I had my awakening, I was like looking left, right, and center for teachers, because I was trying to find the MBA of spiritual awakenings, and I ended up writing it. It was like, how do we break this down?
Oh my God. Okay, this is great. So I want to touch on that MBA of spirituality. But firstly, do we all have guides? Do each and every one of us have guides?
100%. So we all incarnate with a master guide at the very least, and a protection guide. The master guide is with you from conception through to death, and they're here to help you enact your soul contract. That's why when you have your awakening process at the very same time, I've done thousands of psychic readings, right? I started to do them when I had my corporate job. I do them on the weekends at the fairs. I loved it. It was like such a crazy fun time hanging out with all the other crazy psychics. It was fantastic. So what I noticed is when you want to meet your guides, at the same time, you start asking, what's my purpose? What am I here for? So the guides start working with your consciousness, your emotions, dream states. When you visit the astral planes, start giving you answers. That is an uncomfortable time. It can be, depending on how attached to your job. But I find that's a time of letting go of a career, starting to study something new, start your side hustle, or start working part-time are the hallmarks of that time in your life. So you have a master guide, and they're here to make sure you meet the right people, you have the right conversations, you make great decisions. They will help course correct. That's when you get the warning signs. We have a whole lot of other guides around us as well. My other favorite guide to talk about is ancestor guides. So as a medium, I speak to ancestors very clearly. There's like a grandmother around you, Maritza, that's speaking to me. Like she's around you. When you do your podcast, you'll have ancestors behind you, excited that you are breaking intergenerational patterns. You're honoring the intergenerational gifts. You're breaking the patterns of being silenced, not being seen. For you, it's like about being really proud in your body, who you are, representing your culture, representing women. When you do that, you're breaking the intergenerational trauma for the whole women's line on both sides of the family. I know I'm speaking fast, but I get really excited about this.
I'm getting excited too. Don't worry about that.
We have so many ancestors around us going, oh my goodness, this is the cycle breaker. If you are the cycle breaker, you will have all the ancestors that sadly did contribute to the cycle. And that's why sometimes people will say, that's my grandfather, and he was, they didn't like him. The stories and I'm like, well, he's come through because you're cycle breaking and he wants to break the cycle, right? So you'd be surprised who's in your spirit team, because as you evolve, they evolve too. Our consciousness is connected. So they're going, Maritza, she's ascending in consciousness. Let's spend time with her. We will learn and evolve with her. They will be less inclined to spend time with lower vibrational human beings. Why? You're not going to ascend. Every soul on earth and every spirit in form, with a body or without a body, wants to ascend. So they're going to spend time on the planet wanting to spend time with people that are ascending. So that's why if you're doing soul work, purpose work to lift the consciousness of humanity, I always find when I read for clients, they have a lot more guides around them. It's very crowded, the room.
That's so interesting. So would you say our spirit guides are sort of, they've passed over, or they're in a different realm, obviously, but they haven't ascended yet? Is that right?
Everyone's ascending. Spirit guides can have a physical form. You may have known them in a current life or a past life. There are some that may never have had a form, like beings. So when I wrote my book, Brave, I was definitely working with groups of consciousness. I was also working with light beings that had never had an incarnation on earth, or as a physical form as a human, but wanted to lift the consciousness of humanity. You know, it was possibly where my star seed was from. Like, I've had lives in other planets, other star seeds. So I start to work with that consciousness to channel that loving wisdom through. When you see them in a meditation, it'll feel like light. You might feel lightheaded when you channel. It might feel quite tiring at times because the energy runs so fast. You won't be able to hold it for hours. So people that channel, you'll need just to get in fast, type your pants off for 20 minutes, and then bang, you'll feel the channel end. They won't make you channel more than you can handle. When I say that, your physical body can only handle so much. So when I teach my awakening course, I often say to the students in the group, you're going to get to a point where you will start purifying your diet and your mind, because your auric field is trying to hold more light, the light quotient in your field. It won't be able to if your physical body and mind is dense. That's when we stop the deep spiritual stuff, when we start doing healing. This is where we start healing trauma. We start working with therapists, nutritionists, getting fit, and then we go back into the deeper spiritual work. We kind of pendulate.
So is quietening the mind an integral part of being able to connect with your spirit guides? Because, you know, meditation can be used there for, you know, relaxation, stress release, and all of those things that, you know, perhaps are discussed in the corporate world. But then also by quietening the mind, you're allowing space to receive messages through feeling, knowing, hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, whatever all of those senses are. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've just said it in a really accessible way. What we're doing when we're quietening the mind, and if you want to use an actual active meditation or a walking physical meditation, what you're doing is you're lowering the brainwave states. You're lowering the brainwave states to the states we had when we were children, when we're in hypnotic states, where we're open to suggestion. When we open our brainwave states to lower states, what we're doing is increasing our frequency and our vibration. When we lift our vibration, I find quite common, the guides lower their vibration and there's a meeting, because we're all energy, we're all vibrations. That's all we are, as moving particles. So meditation shifts our frequency up. And that's why the awakening happens when we finally let go of low frequency people, relationships, conversation, food. Once we have a big shift, you'll find a big jump in your frequency, and then you'll start getting more spirit guide connections. It can be a little bit overwhelming. I have some students say, I'm having so many dreams and so many visitations. So there's definitely protection invocations you can use. There's different, you can ask the guides to interact with you in a certain way. You can say, I'm tired. It is the law of requests. You actually do choose how to interact with spirit guides. I do find when we have an awakening, everyone is so excited to connect with their guides. They just want to be around their guides the whole time, because we've been disconnected for most of our life. So, when you awaken, you're like, all I want to do is have a party with them.
Love this. You mentioned food, because I want to know about that. How do we eat the right foods to raise our vibration? I think I know the answer, but I'd love to hear.
Yeah, and I'm sure you do, and I'm sure a lot of listeners. But if we just go a little bit deeper, you will already know the foods that affect your frequency. But caffeine is a very high pinging frequency. It's a kind of frequency that like a microphone that it's, you know, when it screeches. You got food that slugs your energy. So if you look at everything as a vibration, food, and you look at water as a conductor of electricity, and you look at us as electric beings, you want food that's able to send messages through your body out to spirit world. And you want food, and you want meditations and conversations that are going to impact your auric field in a way that expands your field, knowing that your auric field is interacting with the quantum field. So we want juices and fresh food. And look, I had my hens night on Saturday night. It was pretty wild. And I'm pretty sure, you know, the high frequency thing we did was we laughed all night. So I was like, it was good medicine the night. But, you know, it's not about like curtailing ourselves to the point that we're pious. I've been a Krishna devotee and a Buddhist devotee, and I've definitely gone down very religious roads. And now as I swing more to the center, I'm like, what brings me joy? And how can I just consciously live? That's really it, you know, and don't try and make radical changes. I was vegan and vegetarian for a couple of years. When I shifted myself a bit too extreme, to my personality can be that way, I find it kind of damages me a bit long term. So now I make slower, gentle changes, and I make them much more sustainably.
Oh gosh. Okay. This is so interesting. All right. So when did you receive your first message from spirit? And do you remember that time when you awakened and were, you know, open to receiving this?
Yeah, I love it. I love how you had, when did you receive your first marriage? I was like, I'm about to get married for the first time in 3 weeks. You were just channeling yourself.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So I had my bit of my dark night 8 years ago. And, you know, when we go through our dark night, I think this will resonate with a lot of your listeners. Your old tribe, the old conversations stop making sense. And it's when you start to book into those weekend workshops, the yoga retreat here, you know, and I did an intuition workshop. This is well before Zoom and well before online. It was an in-person workshop. And we got together one Saturday, and it was a 3-hour workshop to, you know, access your intuition. And in that, I did a reading for a woman, and I could see her child with Coke bottle glasses riding a bike. And I didn't know, but in that reading, it was very clear, very psychic vision. I was always very buoyant. I could always see clearly. And so I gave the message to the mother, and I said, your daughter, I'm being told your daughter's going to ride a bike one day and you've nothing to worry about. I didn't realize, but this lady had given birth to a beautiful daughter. She's only one, but she had some disabilities. And this lady was struggling with the disabilities. But I saw that this girl was going to ride bikes. She had sort of thicker glasses, but she was going to do everything that she would dream her daughter would do. I gave her that message. And 2 things happened, Maritza. The first thing is I saw things that I'd never seen before. And I clearly knew I was seeing things in her destiny line. Number 1. Number 2, I gave a message of healing that this lady needed to hear. And there was some powerful energy exchange, to the point that 8 years later, it's very clear in my mind, that experience. And that's when I first thought, wow. And I felt in my body, this is it. This is what I'm meant to do with my life. So at that same time as I had that realization, I had this dread, thinking, oh my God, it's not finance. What am I going to do? Like that same day, I remember being so enlightened, but also fear started to come up, because I thought, well, okay, it'll just be a side thing. This is just a hobby. Like, I'm not really going to do this. But the more I started to attend these circles every week for 2 years, didn't miss a week. It was my favorite time of the week, was going to these psychic circles. And with every circle, I will say, a kind of a melancholy would set in, because I realized this is the path. And the other path I'm on isn't the path anymore. And I knew intuitively there would be a death of that path and that version of me, and a birth of a new. And I was not ready. I didn't want to do it. I didn't know how to do it. And I didn't really have a mentor at that time to show me what I had spiritual teachers, but I had no corporate woman that said, this is how you do it. This is how you transition out of your corporate into your conscious business and navigate that whole time. And you may even go back to corporate. So I kind of navigated that on my own. And that's why I wrote my book, because I thought there was no template to this.
I know so many people I can give your book to, and I think I will
amazing.
bulk buy them and just hand them out, because people I know are stuck in this exact position. They don't know where to turn next. They have these potentially amazing, thriving businesses, but now have lost interest in them because They're like, they've seen a different side of how things operate. And I get personally very drawn to people who are in that state, who are in that looking for their purpose state, who are questioning things a little bit more. And I probably, that's why I've just launched this course that I've done to help people find and share that unique voice and message of theirs, because it excites me when people are at that stage, because change for me is exciting. Like positive change, choosing change is exciting, rather than going, okay, I'm going to have that dark night of the soul, you know, that's just happened and now I have to change. I get really excited by people who go, I'm going to change, and I'm choosing to change, you know.
Yeah, that's really inspiring.
Yeah. So I you know, it's really interesting. Your book sounds like the perfect Bible for many people. Who, there it is. It's beautiful. For those who are watching on YouTube, Sheila's just shown us a beautiful cover actually of her book Brave. But what does brave actually mean to you? So brave can mean lots of different things, just like the word success can mean lots of different things. But what does it actually mean to you to be brave?
You know, we often think of success and bravery. We often think of bravery in the larger sense. So like big acts and gestures of saving someone else's life. We think of bravery as being filled with adrenaline and doing big, crazy, dangerous things. And we rarely think of bravery in the smaller sense, which is small, little brave acts every day to save our own life. So bravery is little brave acts. It's not big stuff. It's starting to enroll in that Reiki course on a Saturday morning, leaning into the person next to you and going, hey, would you like to meet up for coffee or lunch? Inviting someone into a spiritual circle. It's starting to like invest in spiritual books and read them. It's in saying no to maybe the Friday night drinks. It's just all of these little acts lead you to a big, brave life. It doesn't feel like you're being a hero. But I found for myself and many of the clients I mentor, we look back and I go, do you feel like a hero? Can you believe what you've achieved in 3 months or 6 months? And that's why I really believe in the power of you, Maritza, you know, me as a mentor and coach, all the spiritual teachers and coaches out there. You need them. I have my own mentors and teachers because I know my own limiting beliefs come up and surface. Like you never stop evolving. It's just before, when I didn't have support around me, I know I was going slow. I know I was getting stuck frequently. So, you know, I help women get unstuck when they're trying to be brave.
That's so cool. I know a lot of people would want to know as well about the afterlife and sort of, you know, I believe you receive messages from people who have passed. Is that true?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So can you tell us, you know, almost the life cycle after we pass, and how, you know, you receive those messages from people in that state?
Oh, beautiful. Well, I'll answer this several ways. First, I'll answer it is I wanted to see what the afterlife was on. So I've done ayahuasca quite a few times. I did it the first time in Peru with a shaman. And the first thing I wanted to know, after being a medium for so many years, I was like, I want to know what it's like. Show me the other side. So I got shown the other side and actually passed out, which is very hard to do. I've never heard anyone doing, but I actually fainted from how blinding the light was and how peaceful I felt. So for anyone that's lost somebody and they're on the other side, it is the most peaceful place you could ever be. It is returning back to source energy. So I do believe when we pass over, we go through an experience. We call it the Hall of Learnings. It's a very old traditional word. We do go through a space where we look back at all the lessons we've learned in this life. And did we learn all the lessons? So in a lot of my meditations, I take my students to connect to their higher self and go, what am I here for? And this isn't about success or launching things. It's a bit like, what am I here to grow and learn? Here to forgive my mum. I'm here to break patterns of toxic relationships. I'm here to find my voice. Like that's a small brave. Like that's not something you splash on social media. So when we pass over to the other side, there is a reflection where you review your life. And it's like, did you learn the lessons you promised yourself you would before you came to Earth School? That's the first thing. Secondly, I do believe there's a meeting. I do find, and they sometimes show me the gates where ancestors meet, are ready for you to pass over, and you're met by them. And then I do believe there's an integration time. So sometimes I'll have clients come to me and say, they're not around me anymore. I could feel their spirit around, they're not around. And I feel into it. I'm like, yeah, they're integrating with the other side. They can't be here and integrate with the other side. Also, we have to learn to not always be with them. like our true human experience is to know that they're always connected to us, but we can't rely when someone's passed over. We also have to learn to have autonomy within ourselves. So there's many processes that happen. The law of one is we are all connected. So there is a piece when people on earth lose someone where they realize that there is a cycle and we will return back to where we've come from. Did that kind of give you some answers around that?
Yeah, and I've sort of heard a bit of that before with Isabel Maxwell, who was also on the podcast, and she described that cycle of life. So, I do want to bring some peace to people who have lost loved ones and are struggling with grief, because it's, it sounds like we do go off to such a beautiful, peaceful place. So for people, who are left behind and struggling with that grief and that pain, so, what is a message that you can share with them to sort of ease that suffering that people go through when they lose someone that they love?
Yeah, so I've done a couple of thousand readings easily, and the ones that really stand out to me, sadly, are the ones when people have lost children. I always bring 120% to every reading, but when I find out it's a child, that there's even more of a connection there for me to really bring through a message, because I know there's a natural order that feels like it's broken, even though there is a contract there for that to happen. So I consistently find that the spirits are guiding us on earth, and they're sending us messages all the time. So if you've lost someone, look out for the messages and ask them directly for the message. Say, I would love, say their name, please, to give me a message. Please make it obvious. If I miss the message, give it to me again. Make the message in a way that I can't miss it. And you might even ask, show me a white feather, show me a blue heart, a red heart, show me a yellow stone, whatever it might be, and you'll be shocked. You will get the message. Bring your name forward. Help me meet people with your name. I've had one guy that met one guy, his best mate passed away. This guy was Gary. He goes, Gary, show me your hero. He met 4 Garys the following day: a plumber, a guy in the airplane, the taxi driver, and someone else. 4, and he's like, he when we met me, he goes, I got to share you this story. And I'm like, please do. I actually recorded it for my next book. I said, can I share this story? Because I'm not even giving hope. I'm giving you science, evidence, facts. I'm an accountant. So I'm giving you evidence that it exists. It's up to all of us to believe so that we create it in this reality. I'm giving you the information, then you create it in your reality. So the first thing is they're there to comfort you. So spirits on the other side, ancestors, are there to comfort you. Also, if you're going through some big changes in your life, like I said, if you're breaking into generational trauma, on the other side, they're helping us to do this. So they're actually a big part of our team to comfort people that have lost someone. No, another type of reading and type of evidence I find commonly is people are in distress when their loved ones passed away in pain. So when they're on the other side, I'll quite often get a message, we're out of pain. My legs are working again. My stomach issues have gone. So all those physical ailments, which are very connected to this third dimension, cease to exist beyond this dimension, become pure consciousness. So don't worry. It's like, I sometimes think we're the poor ones being left behind.
Exactly right.
Human schools that, it can be challenging. I'm like, wow, you made it to the other side, lucky. So, so really call on them so you evolve. Call on them to evolve. Yeah.
You call life human school?
Oh, absolutely. We're earth school, human school. Like I've had many mystical experiences. I've experienced the medicine of ayahuasca and bufo, and I'm really, and even before then, when my deep religious periods in my life, I'm really aware we are consciousness. We've been incarnated as women or men or white or brown, and to have certain experiences. And then once we've learned on human school, we'll come back and do a different version, or we'll be different types of guides. So, I really teach, get to know what your soul contract is. And this is really important for women that are launching empowerment or mentor or coaching businesses, because we compare. We're comparing our podcast to other people's podcasts, our books to other people's books. And it's, if you get present to what your contract is, you'll complete it in this lifetime and you will feel so amazing. And if you're trying to look at someone else, you're looking at their soul contract. You're looking at what they came and said they wanted to do, and it'll take you off your path.
That's why social media can suck sometimes, because it's that comparisonitis that people tend to jump onto. I want to hear about your ayahuasca ceremonies. This is important, I think. It seems like it's been an integral part of you being able to channel. Were you called to it? How did it come about? And I've heard many times that people feel called to it, or the plant is calling them.
Yeah, like any spiritual, mystical experience that expands you, even beyond Aya, you're called to it, right? So I was channeling well before Aya, and I'd done many years of therapy and was called to Buddhism and Krishna devotion and learned tarot, so many different modalities. And I personally hit a ceiling in my development. That was my experience. So I was like, and I remember, I had a conversation with God. It was a good old-fashioned conversation with God. And I said, please bring me the thing I need to get to the next level. I can't seem to go there. Basically, I was asking to quantum leap. And I'd heard about ayahuasca in 2014. My first teacher said, there's this thing you can do. It's a drink. You drink it. And it's like 10 years of therapy. And I went, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Little did I know how challenging it would be. So 3 years later, I had my dark night. A relationship ended. I had this crisis. It was a proper crisis. I'd already been doing my spirituality for a little while then. And I was at this point, it was an inflection point where I was like, I don't know how to make the big leap. I don't know how to commit to this path. I don't know how to properly leave my corporate job. So I ended up having a conversation with God, and I really felt like, yeah, see if you can do Aya. So I was shown a friend that had told me of a retreat they'd been to in Peru. And out of nowhere, I reached for Messenger, and I remember him from a shamanic workshop a year prior. I found his name, messaged him saying, can you tell me where you went in Peru? Within half an hour, he emailed me back the link. I went on, found they had a retreat, nearly booked it. I booked it the next day, asked my boss, can I have a few weeks to go and do this thing overseas? He's like, sure. That weekend, booked the flights, and literally 3 months later, I was in the Amazon. I did 5 ceremonies in a row. So it was two nights in a row, 1 day off. We did Kambo, and then we did 3 ceremonies in a row. And I came back transformed and changed.
How?
There were misconceptions from my childhood that I saw clearly. There were decisions I made around my family that I was like, this is not true. I was filled with unconditional love. And at that time, I felt like there's no love in my life. I was programmed mentally. There was new programming, new belief sets laid in. I purged. You vomit, you purge, you cry. I was a really stoic, strong corporate woman that could not access her emotions. And I cried for all the heartbreak I went through, and I kind of got on with life. I'd break up with someone and go, okay, I've got to get on with life. When I needed to sort of really cry and really mourn aspects of my life, right? So I sat, and the thing with the medicine, it's called medicine, you can't outrun it. You have to sit and feel everything. The journey doesn't quite end until it takes you through what it needs to. And I came back because, every intention I set before I went really, really happened. I came back different because I came back more embodied with more self-love and a greater capacity to forgive and compassion for myself and others. And it mightn't sound like much, but that was like the biggest transformation I could have at that point in time.
It does sound like a lot. And the thought of ayahuasca equally terrifies and excites me.
Yeah, I think you need to be a bit scared of it, because it's respect for something that will. And I think we have to honor ourselves for, even if you're called to the medicine, you do it. Many people listening here might have done it or might be on the verge of doing it. Respect your soul. You must have an old soul inside you to sit and go, I'm actually going to do the work in this life. And experiencing ayahuasca is very humbling. And you are absolutely doing the work when you sit with that kind of medicine. And you're up for the game of transformation. And it will be uncomfortable, and it will be blissful and joyful at the same time.
It's actually not legal in Australia at the moment, is it?
No.
So it is somewhere, something that you will have to travel to do, like Peru, like yourself, and it's becoming more talked about, definitely. It is something that so many people are turning to at the moment for healing. There are people that unfortunately do push you away from this way of healing. There's different elements of warning signs put into it, but what's your take on that?
You're called or not. When you're called to do something, nothing and no one can stop you. When you're not called, you won't do it. There's some modalities I am not called to at all. And I respect people that are called to particular modalities. I respect their soul path and my own, and they may not merge, and that is okay. I think any teacher that says don't do something isn't really embodying the surrender of the path. So people ask me, I had a guru in India for a while, and it was an incredible 2 years. And then that kind of ended. And I had a student ask me, Sheila, should I have a guru? I'm attracted to go and study this. And I parked all my views. I said, do you feel called? She said, I do. And I said, if I said, don't go, would that stop you? She goes, no. And I said, well, you know the answer. What I think is no one's business. And so if you are called, then your knowing has to be strong. And even there's an initiation. So spirituality has different initiation points. Stepping into something when a lot of people around you are saying don't do it is one of the first initiations. So just know that you might have to dull the voices that feel loud, and just know you're crossing the threshold is part of the medicine itself, committing to your self-love and going, I know that's for me. Also, if people around you are doing it and you're thinking it's not for me, honoring that and going, I know that's for you, but I just don't feel that is the way for me, in itself is an initiation. Both are.
Yeah, I love that. And, Neil Donald Walsh talks about this all the time. He says, stop making each other wrong, because as a society and a culture, that's what we tend to do a lot of the time, is make each other wrong for our beliefs and what we strive to, respond to. So it's, take that message, stop just because you believe something. Just because someone else believes something, it doesn't mean either of you are right or wrong. It's right for you. It's right for them at that particular time in their lives.
I like how you said that particular time, because I've had periods where I was like, I will not do something, and the timing hasn't been right. And then suddenly I'm like, I feel called to that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So there's something called divine timing, cosmic timing, quantum timing. So there'll be an alignment that will happen if it's meant to. What tends to happen is our consciousness gets seeded with an idea. So, I heard about ayahuasca in 2014, but fear crippled my body. My higher self knew this is going to be a wild ride, and my consciousness wasn't ready. 3 years later, it was. I see the idea of connecting with your spirit guides with a lot of students. I do Instagram lives because I know that if it's meant to sprout and flower, eventually they'll go, yeah, I want to meet my guides. I'm ready to, but you may not be. And that was like me early in my path. I heard a lot of spiritual concepts and I didn't understand them. And I had to just keep on learning. And I reread quite a few books. And then finally one day, I think I got this. I think I read Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now a few times. I was like, I just don't get what he's talking about.
Yeah, same.
Young when I read it.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it took me like 5 times to read autobiography of a yogi.
I've tried that twice.
Yeah, and then I was like, and one day I was like, okay, I'm going to start, and I was ready to finish it. And I'm kind to myself and I'm kind to my students. I'm like, your consciousness has its own pace. Don't compare.
Yes, it makes me think about those books that I've started, and those two are definitely two of them. There's also an intuitive book that I've had on my bedside table for literally 3 years, and every time I do pick it up, I love what I read, and then I sit it down and I don't pick it up again for months. And I decided a couple of days ago for some reason to go and put it back on my bookshelf, and I said to myself, I'll come back to you when the time is right, because it's just I'm not consuming it like I should. But having this conversation with you, I feel like I need to go and grab it back off the bookshelf.
I love it. I love it. Books have a vibration. So we said it's not a match. So I've bought books. Sometimes I'll go in a bookstore and I'll buy it and I'll go, when I'm a match, I'll read it when I need it. So I find I've had people say to me on Instagram, one lady said, she goes, your book flew off she goes, I felt it flew off the shelf towards me. And I laughed because when I wrote it, one of my teachers showed me infuse the book with a vibration so that people find themselves attracted to it, and it meets the people that need it. Had a lady, it was in Barnes and Noble in the US. And she goes, I was on a plane to Korea and I had to buy 3 books and I ran past yours and your book stopped me and I reached for it and bought it. And so, we don't need all this PR and social media. We do and we don't. But if you this podcast will land in the right person's lap. Your book will, programs will, if you set the intention that whoever needs the teachings and the wisdom and the healing gets it, you could just trust.
I've become a little bit like that with this actual podcast, because I mean, I've been doing it for 3 to 4 years. And, at the start, it was this chase of these amazing voices and people that inspired me. And I've just sort of started to sit back a little bit lately and go, let's see who comes. And you came, which is amazing, through your PR and your publicity. Dr. DeMartini came twice out of somewhere, the realms of somewhere. These amazing people are just coming to me now. And it's actually fun to watch, because I made that conscious decision to go, okay, let's see who comes and let's see what we can attract. And like you said, it's that awareness and going, okay, keep your eyes open, be conscious to what you have asked for, and see if it actually manifests into something. And then you start to sort of believe more in what's out there, and possibilities and frequencies. And I could just talk to you for about 3 hours, and I feel like I've got loads of other questions, but I do want to ask one question, because I asked Debbie Malone this question in 2019 before COVID hit. She's a leading psychic in Australia.
Yeah. And we have the same publisher. We're both published by Rockpool, Debbie Malone.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love Debbie's fantastic. Yeah.
She gave us a message for the collective in 2019, just before COVID. That was pretty grim and spot on. And I chose not to actually include it in the podcast episode, because I was like, oh, that was right at the end and it was really heavy and I was scared. And I thought,
you want me to give a message for humanity? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, in a roundabout.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to. I'm actually getting something. Expect miracles to appear in all of our lives, because we're all starting to believe in miracles. And I feel like the generation that's alive now, we've been through the worst. So all of us, our only task is to connect to our authentic self. And when we do that, the planet will get healed. When we do that, we will feel profoundly peaceful. And for all the women, I don't know why I'm saying this, but you connect, this is for the women listening that are single, that's just a download. When you connect to your purpose, your soulmate turns up, 100%. When you connect to your purpose, your soulmate and your soul tribe turns up.
I love it. So beautiful. So beautiful. One question that I ask everyone is, what is something that you once heard that you could not unhear? And you've probably got several of them. It could have been a conversation that you had. It could have been something in a book that you read. It could have been something that just stopped you in your tracks and made you sort of change the way you thought about things. Does anything pop to mind?
I have so many things. I'm starting to write my second book. So, when you've got so many things, it's hard to distill it. This opened up the law of attraction in a massive way. I heard it many years ago, before even The Secret. So Bob Proctor said, if you hold it in your mind, you will hold it in your hand. And I remember thinking, what's he talking about? Like, I think sayings that don't make sense, then make sense later, can be very profound. So I didn't get it then. But later, when I teach manifesting and creating vision boards and all the spiritual laws, I teach them in my program, I realized that these are the keys. So when I heard that, he introduced me to, the 12-24 spiritual laws. And it is truly visualizing. I visualized so much in my life and it's all happened. And I spend time, and even in human design, I'm a pure manifester. So just given that, I feel like my dharma is to teach people to manifest, because I naturally know how to do it. And when Bob Proctor said that, well, in my 20s, I was like, what is this? I think I'm meant to learn this. So, I think that's the one that I couldn't, when I realized how much the law of manifesting operates in our life, I can't unknow that. And that's a game changer.
Yeah, me too. I 100% agree with you. And Bob Proctor, you just reminded me, I used to listen, I had this meditation of his that went for about 20 minutes. And I think for 1 year, every night I'd plug it into my my headphones into my ears and fall asleep to this to his meditation. And it had that exact saying in it. If you could hold it in your mind, you could hold it in your hand. And yeah, when you just said it, then I was like, oh, I remember that. I've fallen asleep to that so many times.
I know, you programmed your unconscious mind, Maritza. I held this book in my mind for years. I was like, I can see it. And I'd never written a book. I hadn't even written a blog post. I reckon 10,000 words in Excel. That's how I was anti-word. I'd never written. I was a proper accountant. I wrote this book in Excel initially, and people are going to laugh and think that's weird. But I was like, I know I'm meant to write a book, but I don't even know how to, but I know how to use Excel. So I'm going to write it in Excel.
That makes
I'd sit this type of way in my spreadsheet, my book.
In just one tab, or did you like have multiple?
I had different tabs. So every tab was a chapter, and I would like wrap the text, and I'd have concepts.
There's something in that.
I think in boxes. I was like, okay, I can think, but the minute it was in a Word document, it felt too spatial, right? So I was like, but if it's in a box, I'm like, I understand it's in a box, right? So I like that's like, honor your weird, honor your flavor of weird.
I reckon there's something in that. There's definitely some strategy to that, and I love it. I think publishers should probably be out there listening and going, hey, we are switching from Word and we are going to Excel.
Going to Excel.
And we're going to Excel in Excel. I love that. Thank you so much for this conversation today. I knew I was going to feel so lit up from speaking to you. And, I think you said it during this conversation, is that conversations themselves are something that lift your frequency. And this has really, truly done it for me today. You're living a life that is so in alignment with who you are, and it shows, and it's contagious. So I look forward to reading your book. I look forward to handing it out to my beautiful friends who are sitting in that position that you were in, and I know you'll be able to help them with your words that you wrote in Excel. And might even look up some of your courses and other incredible work, because I don't feel like my work with you is done yet.
Amazing, Maritza. I love that. I would love to work with you. I'd love to work with you and your community. Thank you for having me on. You are a truly special woman.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favorite listening platform.